If you've been here for long or been with this podcast for any length of time, you know how important I think mindsets are to our success. And that's where we're headed today. 4 mindsets, perhaps 4 leader shifts that will help you change your viewpoint and your success as a leader forever. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you could join us in the future for episodes on your favorite social media channel. Well, unless your favorite channel is like TikTok, where you can't join us, but you can find out about when those live episodes are happening, how you can get involved, and get some other inside info about the show by going to either our LinkedIn or podcast groups and join those. You can do that by going to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. Simple as that. Today's episode is brought to you by my latest book, Flexible Leadership, Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way and that following our strengths might not always be the best approach. In a world that is more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective, a set of tools to create great results that their organizations and teams need. That's why Flexible Leadership is here, and that's what it provides you. Learn more and order your copy today at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. And with that, I'm going to bring in our guest. According to the book title, the book cover, and Amazon, he's Phillip B. Wilson, but he said I can call him Phil, so that's what I'm going to do. Phil Wilson is the founder of Approachable Leadership, where he and his team help clients thrive and create extraordinary workplaces. He is a national expert on leadership, labor relations, and crafting positive workplaces. He is regularly featured in business media, including Fox Business Network, Fast Company, Bloomberg News, HR Magazine, and the New York Times. He regularly delivers keynotes, workshops, and webinars, and has been called to testify before Congress as a labor relations expert. He graduated magna cum laude from Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, and went to get his law degree at the University of Michigan. He is also the author of his latest book, The Leadership Playbook: 4 Simple Changes to Score Big and Unleash Your Team's Potential. Phil, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All the way from Oklahoma.
All the way from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Now, I am so glad that one of the last things you said before we got ready to go live was you said, I think, Kevin, that you and I have a lot in common in what we talk about and think about. And I think that's true, which makes me especially glad since you in college were a debater. And I don't really want to have a debate with you because I would probably lose. So I think rather than that, we'll just have a conversation. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I do like a good debate, but I really do much prefer a conversation.
Well, that's what I'm hoping we will have today. So let's start here. When you were growing up in Oklahoma, I'm guessing you didn't realize or think you'd be doing the kind of work you're doing now. Exactly. So tell us a little bit about the journey that gets you from there to here. Sort of how do you end up doing this kind of work?
Well, especially if you talk about leadership and kind of leadership consulting, I never thought that I would be doing that kind of work. Our family business was a labor relations consulting firm, and I went to law school. I was a weirdo in law school because I knew I wanted to be. Most people don't know what kind of law they want to practice, and they end up practicing whatever kind of the first partner is that they work with. I knew going in, I wanted to be a labor lawyer. I paid real close attention to my labor and employment law classes, and probably not close enough attention to the rest of the stuff, but I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. And I practiced law for a while. I did have I don't know that it was a great decision on their part, but I was hired by a client of mine to be their director of HR for a year. So I got experience of being in human resources, which is really my first leadership experience. That was the first time I had a team. I then moved back to the family business, which was this consulting business around labor relations. And when you're in that business, Kevin, you are eyewitness to a lot of leadership train wrecks. And so
that's why you're there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. They don't call you until like the train has crashed. And so
not like it might crash.
Right.
There's already casualties, right?
It's mayhem. We need help. Please desperately come down here. And in that experience, you're going in for a crisis situation and you kind of are helping them out of the crisis, but you also at the same time are, you realize this problem didn't like just happen. There was a whole lot of problems that occurred to get to this point. And our goal is to not have this problem in the future. So we're going to have to fix a lot of these leadership issues that are here. And I just, over the years, struggled trying to find solutions, especially for first level leaders, that frontline leadership position, which is so critical. And so that ended up leading me down this path of really studying leadership and learning about leadership and writing about leadership. And so that's kind of how I ended up where I am. I did not start out in life thinking I was going to be a leadership writer or consultant.
It's an interesting perspective. I'm glad that I let you unpack that or asked you to unpack that, because I think that gives you a unique perspective. And certainly I'm guessing through all of those cases and all of those clients, you saw some trends in terms of some of the stumbling blocks that led to the mayhem. And I'm confident, and that shows through to me in the book. We're talking to Phillip B. Wilson, the author of the Leadership Playbook. And I hear some of that wisdom coming through in the book, and we're going to get to all of that. I'm curious though. The book is called The Leadership Playbook, but the book's really about, as I said in the open, it's really about 4 mindsets. And so why is it that mindset is where you went in terms of crafting this book?
Well, Kevin, the book, and you've written books, and you've probably have had this similar experience. Hopefully not exactly my experience, but I wrote this book 3 times.
I have not had that experience.
Okay. Well, you that's because you're wiser and better than I am. So I wrote, and I had an editing consultant that I had used on my last book, and she was wildly helpful. Her name's Janet Goldstein. She's amazing. So she worked with me on my last book. But instead of doing the smart thing, which would be go to your editor and go, hey, I've got this idea for a book and I want to, what do you think about it? And what should we do? Instead, I just wrote another book. And that book was about a core theme that I'm sure we'll talk about, which is the hero assumption. So I wrote that book and I sent that book to Janet, and Janet said, yeah, like I like what you're doing here, but you really need to start, there's a framework that you need to kind of pull out of this. So then we did a whole second rewrite of the book, which is where we first started talking about these different shifts and like how they related. And then I sent that version to her, and she said, I don't really see where you are in this book. Like, where have you applied these same shifts and in your own life? And that was a sabbatical week that I did a third rewrite, and I was really reflecting hard on my own leadership in my own life, in my own company. And I realized I was not really a very good leader. Like for my own, I was kind of the cobbler, whose children have no shoes. And that changed the book completely. I mean, I then, the book you have in your hands is,
having read it, I'm confident that that's true now that I know this evolution. Right?
Yeah. And the ideas were all the same. They were very important. I've trained them to other people for a long time, but I never really truly reflected on am I doing them, and how well am I doing them? And we had just sort of come through about a 5-year transformation in my own company where I was applying all these things. So I end up weaving in the stories of other clients and other leaders that we've worked with, but also how I did this myself with my own team.
Yep. and that is all there. So if you're looking for a book that is all research and no author, this isn't the book.
No.
But having said that,
That was the first book, by the way.
okay, well, there you go. There is some research though there's obviously research in the book, but there's something in the book that's a really important idea that I don't think 491 episodes in we've ever talked about here. And so, not that I'm presuming that anyone who has listened to all 491. Here's, by the way, if you have listened to, if you can tell me honestly that you've listened to over 400, I'm going to send you a copy of Phil's book. There you go. And all you got to do is email me, Kevin@KevinEikenberry.com, and tell me that. And I'll send you a copy of Phil's book.
All right.
I'll send you a copy of Flexible Leadership too. If you can honestly tell me that you've listened to, Kevin, I bet I've listened to at least 400 episodes. But anyway, in none of that, I wasn't planning to say any of that, but there it is. In none of that, I don't think we've ever talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect. And and because you talk about it, and you do a great job of talking about it in the book, let's just talk about it for a second, because I think it's important. And so you get the chance to share that with this audience. What is it? And really, more importantly, why does it matter to us as leaders?
Yeah. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is this idea that when we know nothing about a complicated subject, and I don't think there's any more complicated subject than leadership, but it's certainly, on the front row of the team picture of complex subjects, that when you don't know anything and you know you don't know anything, that's a safe place to be, right? I'm aware that I know nothing about this subject and it's really hard. So I'm not going to do dumb things. I'm not going to sort of, jump in without asking people or learning more about it. You quickly, as you begin to learn about a complicated subject like leadership, you quickly end up to this place, which is called Mount Stupid. So Mount Stupid,
no, go ahead.
On that curve is when you know some about this complicated subject and you're looking back to where you were at the beginning and you're like, well, I knew nothing, but now I know some stuff, and wow, like I have arrived. And that is called Mount Stupid because you really don't know very much, but you think you know a lot, and you are going to make a lot of mistakes if you find yourself there, which, as you know, is chapter 1 of the book, where we begin with me at the top of Mount Stupid.
Yep. So, look how smart I am. When everyone around you is go, man, you have just gotten started, right?
Yeah.
Just gotten started. And then of course we slide back. Eventually, the beautiful thing about this, and I'd like to hope that I'm further down this curve at this point in my life and in my career where measurably I know a lot about this particular subject. And many people would say I know a lot about this subject, and yet I realize I know less than maybe I've ever learned. Like as we realize how complex it is, we realize how little we actually know.
I mean, put yourself in my shoes for a second. I was just like you, going around the country, training and teaching people about how to be a good leader. And I had like a whole book on it, and we do workshops and all this stuff. And I'm telling you how to do this leadership stuff. And I realize, wow, like what a fraud. I don't do this at all with my own team. And that's a hard place to be. But if you do recognize, look, this is learnable, it's something I can do. I've been teaching it, so I know what to do. So this is a lot more, am I going to do what I say you should do? And that's not always easy, but I was in a place where I had a great team. And here's the thing. When you're a leader, you're like the product or like the service you're providing is leadership, right? And so just like any other customer service situation, you ask your customer, hey, how are we doing? Are we providing the service that you expected? Is there a way that we could do that service better? Is there some part of this service that you wish we would stop doing? That is leadership. Ask your team. They will tell you. They will give you all the steps to take to be the leader that they need. And that's the journey that I then went on with my own team. And as soon as you present like, hey, look, it's okay to give me negative feedback. It's okay to tell me I can do a better job. You'll get all the to-dos that you need. And if you just do them, then you're winning.
You're heading in the right direction for sure. So the book talks about 4 mindsets, which I said from the start, and I promised we'd talk about, and they're all about beliefs.
Yes.
Right. So your leader shifts, if you will, are all about beliefs. And we're going to dive into them, but believe in ourselves, believe in others, believe in our
your impact is the first
really,
one.
First one. I missed the first one. Believe in your impact, believe in your impact, believe in yourself, believe in others, believe in your relationships. We're going to talk about each of them. I want to actually start with believe in yourself, because as it relates to what you were just saying, it's the second one of the 4, but I'm going to start there because when you realized, when you came to this moment of the emperor has no shoes, I'm guessing that your belief in yourself took a hit.
Oh yeah.
So, and I've written a lot over the years, and there's a good bit in my new book about confidence, which is obviously in part related to belief in self. So let's start with that one. We'll come back to impact in a second.
Sure.
Talk to someone who maybe is having some challenges with believing in themselves, especially as a leader. What are you whispering into their ear right now?
So a couple of the big idea of that chapter is around the like bias. So like we have these certain just, there's shortcuts that we take in life that we will repeat negative behavior and we will repeat mistakes because that's just like the pattern that we have. And 2 of the ones that I talk about, so one of them is actor observer. So actor observer is just, if something happens to me, it's the external world that has created this situation, and I did the best that I could to kind of deal with it. But if I observe that same situation with someone else, like they're flawed in some way, right? So you have to understand, and by the way, sometimes sort of we're like observing ourselves in a little twist of that. Like so you have to get into the mode of catching yourself going, look, the reason that I'm facing this problem is not that like I'm a failure, or the reason that this individual has this problem is not because they're a failure. There are obstacles that get in your way. And this leads to, the next chapter is on the hero's journey. But when Frodo has a problem on his quest, Gandalf doesn't just like pop in and go, what an idiot, right? He helps him remove the obstacle. And that's the trick you have to make in your brain, is that when you see someone that's struggling or whatever, what can I do? I know that I can help them remove that obstacle. So that's a belief in yourself. And then the second component of that is called confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is once I get an idea in my head about like this individual or about myself, I start
there
looking.
It is again.
Yes.
There it is again. Right.
I start looking for evidence. I only see evidence. This is the thing that's crazy about this sort of mind bug, is I ignore any evidence to the contrary, and I only accept evidence that proves what I'm thinking. And so this is where your self-confidence is really important. If you start to believe in yourself, then you will begin to see evidence that's a good assumption to make about yourself. And if you don't, that's the only evidence you're going to see.
Yeah. What do you say to someone? Because I'm sure in a workshop, someone has said this to you. Well, what about, can we believe in ourselves too much? Like the whole conundrum of confidence, but not being overconfident. What would you say to someone about that, Phil?
Yeah, you have to have some humility, right? You have to, you don't want to like beat yourself up all the time, but like you must live in that world, going back to Dunning-Kruger, where you do not have all the answers and you are constantly learning. And this is, and look, it's a moving target too, right? Like when you're leading a team, this is the point of your book. You can't just be like one person to everybody. You have to be flexible. You have to, you got to be the leader that this person needs at this point in their life, right? And that changes over time. So that's the other, component to it is you have to be humble enough to go, yeah, the formula that I did that worked over here isn't the answer. I'm going to have to ask for help. I'm going to have to ask my team to help me be the leader that they need me to be. And if you're in a mindset where you already have all the answers, that you are at the top of Mount Stupid.
And then, of course, we only want to hire people who aren't as smart as us, which doesn't and make that's compounds the problem. So I said we would go back to the first of the mind shifts, the first of the mindsets, which is believe in our impact. So what do you mean by that? And what's the mindset that we need to adopt in this area around our impact?
Yeah. Going back to what you just said, so the one problem is a lot of times we hire people that are, we think are dumber than us just so that, they don't show us up.
We want to be the smartest person in the room, right?
Right. But the other problem is we hire people that have never done leadership before. This is such a common issue with frontline leaders. People that are high performers in doing a task, but have never done leadership before. And then you throw them in and you're just like, change the color of their shirt and go like, you're a leader now. And that's not the way that works. And you end up creating all kinds of horrible, leadership problems when you do that, because first of all, go back to actor observer. I see someone that's struggling and I'm like really good at that job because I was the best performer doing it right before I got this job, and everyone's an idiot. Right. And so then I start managing by going like, you don't even know how to do your job. I am not leading at that point. And you're also upsetting, your entire department, and anyone who has an option quits and goes to work for your competitors. And then then you're just left with terrible performers that don't have any other options. It's not a good place to be organizationally. So the belief in your impact, Kevin, is, the way I describe it in the chapter is like the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. So everyone kind of understands placebo. This is where I think this is going to cure me, and a sugar pill actually will do it. Well, the opposite's also true, which is if I tell you that this sugar pill got side effects, you're going to have some muscle cramps. You might have an upset stomach. You might get a little bit dizzy. If I give you a sugar pill and tell you it has those side effects, a good chunk of people will have those side effects. The brain-body connection is incredibly complex, and that is the way leadership works too. Like if you are a nocebo effect leader, going back to confirmation bias, every time I see something, it's just like, oh boy, there they go again. You are having a negative impact on every interaction around you. And that can be words you say, it will be your body language and the way you behave around people. It'll be what you will allow them to do without, jumping in and letting them sort of do what you need them to do. There's a lot of negative things that happen there. And so the lesson I have in that chapter is just basically, look, you are having an impact. There's no like neutral zone. You are one way or the other, you're impacting people, and you need to make sure that you're more of that placebo leader versus the nocebo leader.
Yeah. That the impact that the waves that you're making, that the ripples that you're leaving are helping and not hurting. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So the third of the four is belief in others. And then the last is belief in relationships. I want to talk about belief in others. And to do that, this is one of the places in the book where I was nodding my head and go, yep, we're right. We're in lockstep alignment here. Mm-hmm. And then you told a story about a man I'd never heard of before. And
right, Daniel Kish.
There it is. It's on the screen. Yeah. So talk about, so real quick about why the mindset of believing in others matters so much. And then illustrate that by telling us a little bit about Daniel.
Yeah. So the mindset shift here is the hero assumption. You have to believe. Nobody wakes up in the morning, brushing their teeth, looking in the mirror, going like, I cannot wait to get to work because I want to screw everything up. And I feel like today's the day that I can mess up 100%. So nobody's like that. We wake up, we're not the villain of the story. We're the hero of the story. And if you have that assumption about your team, you will behave differently around them. You're going to just what we were just talking about. You will say different words to them. You will believe in them. You'll believe in them even when they are struggling and maybe don't believe in themselves. And that is the hero assumption. And then the story I tell about Daniel Kish. So this is, we call this Becoming Batman. This is the subhead of this chapter. So Daniel Kish is an incredible human. He was born without sight. His eyes were completely removed before he was 1. And so he's non-sighted his entire life. But his parents refused to treat him like a blind child. And so they let him play on playgrounds with his brothers and his friends. They didn't like coddle him and put him in, a bubble to prevent him from experiencing the same things that normal sighted kids experience every day. And I am sure a lot of parents were aghast at the things that they let this child do. But what happened is miraculous. So Daniel
It truly
Kish
is. Like I was blown. First of all, do you know him?
I don't know him. No.
Okay.
but
Now I'm disappointed because I was thinking that this was a firsthand story. What you're about to hear, buddy, is amazing. So you've got the story of Daniel, you know the background, and now tell us about what Daniel can do and what he does in the world.
It's truly miraculous. So because his parents allowed him just to sort of like run around like a normal child, he had to figure out how he could navigate in that world, right? And I am sure he like ran into playground equipment and ran into trees, but so do sighted kids, and he eventually figured out that by clicking his tongue, he could hear the sound bouncing off of things around him, and that became much that's not something that's unusual to non-sighted people, but he was able to refine that like to the point where it was activating the same receptors in the brain that activate when you see something. And so he was able to basically create sonar that allowed him to navigate in the world, and he developed that so well. He can ride a bike. You can put him on a hike on a trail in the woods, and he won't like fall off of a cliff, and he can like do that on his own. You can sit him on a park bench, and he can draw a picture of everything that's going on around that park, even if he's never been in it before, without like going and feeling things. Like he can just through the sound reflections tell like, oh, there's a playground equipment over there, and there's a tree over there. And so that I tell that story, and that story by itself is miraculous. But the point that I'm making is that it's not just Daniel that's miraculous. When you think about the hero assumption, his parents were the ones that believed in him, that believed he could, and I'm sure they never dreamed he would like develop sonar, but they were going to.
They believed that he could do things that.
Yes.
That they might not understand to start
right
with.
And they believed they weren't going to treat him different, and they didn't. And then he sort of worked out the rest of this, but that was the hero assumption. And the point that I'm making there is miraculous things can happen if you just believe in others and you don't treat them like they can't do something. Because if his parents had treated him like any other blind child, he would be operating the world like any other blind child. So they really deserve a lot of, credit. And that is kind of a heroic, story. I'm sure that they were many times frowned upon for the way they raised Daniel.
I'm confident of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people are thinking about even as we're having this conversation, right? That they're thinking about that.
Yeah.
The fourth of the, I'm looking at the clock, and the fourth of the mindset shifts, the leader shifts, is about believing in your relationships. And you talk a lot there about things that I think, not to disrespect this in relationship to the others, but you have some great stuff there about psychological safety and a lot of things that I think are really well covered in other places. And I'm not saying that because we shouldn't read it in your book, but I made choices here about where I wanted to spend our time. And so I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah,
having said all of that, and having us now talked at least a little bit about each of the four, is there something we didn't talk about or you want to say before I take us into the final portion of our conversation?
I mean, the sum up of that fourth one is that there are things that your team is asking, but they aren't saying it out loud. And what they need to hear are answers to these three questions. And they're simple, but they're so powerful, which is, do you like me? Do you think I have what it takes? And do you think I'm worth the effort? And if you can help them answer those questions, if you can be saying and doing the things that express to them, I like you, I think you have what it takes, you're worth the time and the effort, they will run through walls for you. And that's how you build connection and how you build strong relationships.
We all want to follow someone that we know, like, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
Those questions help the other person realize or know that we know, like, and trust them, and that moves us a great ways down the road of being more effective for ourselves and for our teams. The leader shifts, and now we have that playbook. So a couple things before we finish up, Phil. One is I'm really curious. I'm really shifting gears now for the last couple of questions. Like, what do you do for fun?
I like to play golf, although unfortunately I've been traveling so much with the book launch and just the day job. I have not. I was supposed to go on a golf trip, so the only time I've touched my golf clubs this quarter is I packed my clubs for a golf trip that I had to cancel. So I love to play golf. That's
step one: pack the clubs.
Right.
Step two: take them out at the course, not back at the house.
Exactly. I love to read. I'm a big reader, and that's another hobby. But yeah, those are my main things for fun.
And by the way, everybody, on the day that we're having this conversation, it's Phil's birthday. So I'm hoping, Phil, that for your birthday, maybe you can get to go out and do some golfing here sometime.
I am going to, the guy that I canceled the golf trip with, I'm going to have dinner with. So at least I will see him. But I'm not going to play today.
Well, hopefully he'll give you a hard time about that.
Will.
So,
don't worry.
So you chose me over golf. I'm impressed. Or maybe that was bad judgment. I'll leave that to you to decide. You mentioned reading, and it's the only thing you knew I was going to ask you. So what are you reading these days? What are you reading right now?
I am on a path. I talk in the book a lot about the EOS process that we use to run our business. And I recently went to a conference that they put on just teaching different components of that. And part of that conference is there was everyone had a book there. And so I read two books that came out of there. One of them is called Data. And this is kind of part of the EOS process, but it's all around how you keep score and what do you do to keep score in your company. And I really enjoyed that one. I then also read a book on sales called Outgrow that is going back to this fourth shift on relationships. This is kind of a sales process that it's all built around building strong connections and relationships. And then I'm one of those weird people. I also have a third book which is on Audible that I listen to when I drive back and forth to work. And that one is called Finish Big, which again, going back to sort of how am I thinking about running our business.
We will have links to all three of those, as well as Phil's book, The Leader Shift Playbook, 4 Simple Changes to Score Big and Unleash Your Team's Potential. We'll have all links to all of that in the show notes. Make sure you go there to find all of those things. Before we wrap up, where do you want to point people, Phil? Where can they learn more? Where do you want to point them in relationship to the book and your business and all those sorts of things?
Yeah, the easiest place to start is go to yourleadershift.com. So just yourleadershift.com. That's the easiest place. I'm on LinkedIn, Phil B. Wilson on LinkedIn. Amazon is a place to buy the book. If you just look up The Leader Shift, you'll find that. So those are easy coordinates.
And we'll have those in the show notes as well for you, everybody, as you probably are aware. Before I say goodbye to Phil, I have a question for all of you who are watching, or probably more of you later listening. And it's the most important question I could ask you right now. Now what? What action will you take as a result? Maybe there's some more books you're going to buy as a result of being here. But beyond that, in all seriousness, what ideas did you hear today that struck you in a way where you need to take some action? What action will you take as a result of being here? If you don't take action, if you just come here to collect knowledge, then, well, that's better than some things we could collect, I suppose. But it's not the same as taking action.
Yeah.
So I always want to help people close the knowing doing gap. And the only way you're going to close the knowing doing gap from this conversation is to answer that question. Now what? What will I do with what I got? And if you do that, your chances of success, your chances of making a shift as a leader go way up. Phil, thanks so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. Really appreciate the time we had today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it, Kevin.
And so for you, everybody, that means we're done today. But there are 490 episodes back. Remember, I gave you that offer. If you've listened to over 400, I want to know, and I've got gifts for you. But in all seriousness, whether this is your 400th, or your fourth, or your first episode, know that we will be back next week with another episode of Remarkable Leadership Podcast, and I hope you'll join us then.